So first off, thank you so much for doing this. This is incredible. I love the fact that these motorcycles can bring people together, and it doesn't matter where you are.
No, it was it's brought back so many memories since we contacted each other. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah.
It was a great period, which I enjoyed very much.
So let's just jump into it. I'm a sucker for origin stories. Like I love how people met in their relationships, and I love hearing about people's first motorcycles.
Okay. Well, my very first bike was a gift from my brother-in-law. He was a policeman, used it to commute to work, and eventually grew out of it and said, "I've got this thing in the garage. Do you want it? I know you're interested in bikes." And so at 37, I got my first bike, and had to get do a test and all the rest of it. Yeah, so that was my opening, because when I was 16, I was fortunate that my parents, my mum had an old car, so I went into cars. My brother, he didn't have that opportunity. He went into bikes, and we just went in different directions in that respect.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was my first introduction, and I knew all the theory, but then putting it into practice was quite a different thing. Find some very quiet country roads, and eventually I got the hang of it, and it was a revelation. Great fun.
What bike was it? Do you remember?
That was an Eastern European MZ, East Germany, MZ 125. Very, very tall bike with not very many horsepower.
Yeah.
But it was good. It was good to learn on.
Yeah, it was extremely utilitarian to get you from A to B. Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's all. Now, whereabouts are you?
I'm in South Yorkshire in England.
Yep. Just so because people are watching from all over. So just to kind of put things into perspective of where we are, like I mentioned before, these motorcycles have a way to get under your skin, kind of help you through things. And later in life, you said you were 37. I think I didn't get into motorcycles slash mopeds. My first introduction was into mopeds, but it wasn't until my kids had all moved off to college. And at that point, when you have 4 kids early and you grow up, it was easier to find tools when I couldn't find them, to just drive to the hardware store and go get another one. Because the aggravation of walking around the house, we're going where you thought it was, and then going back. Once they moved out, and I could take something apart, leave it exactly there, come back to it a couple of days later, everything is still right where I left it.
Okay, yeah, I know what you mean.
So
it's only a mess to everybody else.
That's right. And thankfully, mine was contained in the basement at that point in time, because we were in Connecticut. But it really, that first introduction. So I don't believe there's a right time to start. I think each age gives you different perspective. I can like your brother probably started earlier, right?
Yeah, he did. Yeah, as soon as he could.
Yeah.
I remember, he is 3.5 years older than me, and I remember him having all sorts of mopeds, and then moving on to an aerial 500 twin.
Wow.
And I was about in my early teens, 13, 14, and I remember great fun. He put a sidecar on the side of it, and took me to school. That was pretty cool to be dropped off. And he did all sorts of that bike. He painted it bright blue. He put 8 hangers on it. He painted the white tires white wall. And yeah, he was always changing. It's like anything you're excited about, you want to try something else. He had, I think, the probably most memorable journey I had with him. He moved on to what do you call it? A water buffalo, Suzuki 3-cylinder, and that was the first bike I went over 100 miles an hour on the back.
What you talking
about? Yeah, that's got to be a different experience. There's one thing for doing, that triple digits when you're holding on and you have complete control.
Sure.
But when you're on the back and you're just holding on, I
I just peeked over his shoulder. I could only see the rev counter, and I was too cool to ask how fast, but
Right.
I eventually figured it out later. But yeah, it felt like
Yeah, I think because I started riding motorcycles late, that I'm not a I'm not an adrenaline junkie when it comes to that way, right? It's not like I've got to twist the throttle and see how fast I can get this thing to go. It's uh, it's just I enjoy riding it at lower speeds, middle speeds. I don't get the same rush. I think because I started late, I see pavement or tarmac as sandpaper, really
Mhm.
coarse sandpaper,
Yeah, yeah.
and the faster you go, the more skin it's just going to rip off.
Yeah, I think yeah, that's it. I think with 20 years more experience, maybe 20 years more imagination,
Right.
how bad could this be?
Yeah.
You tend to throttle back a bit.
Yeah, just pull it back because I'm like, at this rate of speed, how long would I slide and how long would my pants serve me?
Sure,
And I've come to the conclusion that not long.
not long.
And so I up it's like I always tell people 35 miles an hour is going to put you in the hospital. Anything greater than that just extends the stay.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's right.
You
Yeah,
know,
and
yes.
I think it was my brother as well that I won't say I'll blame him for it, but he was the one that tempted me to continue the journey with bikes. He took me. We were at his house one day. He took me to one side and said, "Let me come and show you what I've got in my garage."
Yeah.
And he got a little brand new little monkey bike, and it's just like a really lovely shiny toy. And I
Right.
said to him straight away, "I've got to have one of these." And yeah, that's where my monkey bike journey started.
So is this like just recently, a
No,
couple
no,
of years ago,
no.
or this is the early Z50?
Yeah, this. Yeah, oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was. When was it? I think it was 2003 when
Yep.
I bought mine. It wasn't a Honda; it was a Chinese copy.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
But actually, it was a really good bike. It was very reliable, and yeah, that just opened my eyes completely. Found some websites. Found one in particular for the UK was a real bonus to be able to join in with people of quite a similar age. So we all knew that we were just on bikes where we just tootle along,
Right.
you know, watching the sky, watching the birds, and that was great fun. That was absolutely great fun. Um, there were, I don't know, 50 people probably in the in this gathering on the website, members, I
Yeah.
suppose, and each member would completely voluntarily say, "Right, guys, next time we get together, probably once a month, why don't you all come to where I live? I'll figure out a route for us to go around." And so we put our bikes in the car, drive to wherever it was in the country, and off we go for a Sunday. It was great
Wow.
fun, great fun.
That had to be just, there's something about riding slow bikes fast.
Yes,
So much
yeah,
fun, right? It's
yeah,
like I've got my grandson's a little Kawasaki. It's a MT1 75cc two stroke, and it
yeah.
does 40 miles an hour with me on it. And it's like you're doing 100 miles an hour on any other bike because everything is all wrong. Me on it, the geometry is all wrong. Everything's there, but the tires are a little bitty. But it's just so much fun.
Sure, sure. Well, the odd thing about the monkey bike as well was that it's like if you're sat at your dining room table in a very upright chair and you just put your hands out, that's the riding position of a monkey bike. And it's absolutely perfect
Yeah.
position. People say, "Crikey, aren't you aching when you get off?" No, not at all, not at all.
Yeah.
And yeah, great fun, fabulous.
And so, what size engine?
It started off as a 90, and then I
90.
got that itch to fiddle with it. It went to I got it a bore up kit to 108, and then later to 125.
Yeah.
So it was really all about wanting to get just a little bit faster, so you could run with the trucks and with the general
Yeah.
the general speed, maybe 50
Yeah.
or 60 is what you needed to be able to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which maybe for some people sounds scary on 8-inch wheels, but actually
Right.
it wasn't.
Yeah. It's actually safer. You know, it's when because you can get out in front of traffic, you can get through. You're not impeding traffic,
Yeah,
which
that's right.
which frustrates people and may cause them to do things that aren't safe for everybody involved.
Yeah.
You know, you can keep up with traffic. You can get out of the way of things. That's the perfect thing. I think that's the way I always look at it. It's not like I need to go faster. And I had this conversation with Carrie, my wife, about her bike, and just need to be able to get up to 60 miles an hour in a relatively short order that she's comfortable with. But if she needs to give it the gas, she can.
Yeah.
And that's the thing with her. And it's not about going fast. It's just actually sometimes increasing the horsepower makes it safer.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
There's a tipping point, you know, that, you know, you make this, you put a 250 on that thing, and yeah, you may run into some problems.
There were one or two guys who were sports bike riders,
Yeah.
and who really wanted to get up there into this, you know, into the crazy speeds, which really wasn't as a smart idea.
You know, thinking of that, so I had a friend of mine, this is when we lived in Connecticut, that he was one of those guys with pedal start mopeds. And he had a Honda Hobbit. I don't know if you remember what they are, but just this yellow little leg shield on it, pedal start moped.
Okay.
And he had a flowered basket on the front of it. And this thing did 60 miles an hour. But
Wow.
you're on a 100-pound bicycle, basically, right? That's got an engine attached to it. You're on these little 2.5-inch tires that are 17 inches, and geometry is all wrong because it wasn't made for those speeds. And it was so twitchy, and it was just so crazy to ride. But the flowered basket on the front just set it off, because you know, he had this thing that would wind up, and it was crazy. But it's one of those things, you know. I didn't ever want my pedal start mopeds to do that. 40 miles an hour was good. You know, that's enough to get me into traffic, especially the roads I was riding on. So what's the longest you've taken this monkey bike on?
Well,
Longest trip?
we eventually decided that we'd like to go on a long trip, and one of the guys had really had a cancer problem, and had come through it and wanted to do some charitable event to help pay back. And so he said, let's do a charitable event. I'll put it all together. Who's up for it? And you know, most of us said yes. And so yeah, it was a journey from the very north of Scotland, a place called John O'Groats, down to the very far south of England, in Cornwall, called Land's End. That was, if you were to drive by car using motorways, it's about, I think, 850 miles. But of course, we were using little tiny roads, so it was just over 1,000 miles in a week.
Wow, in a week. Oh, that's perfect. You know, there's something that is my, I think that's my ideal amount of miles per day, because you're looking at, it's like 150 miles, something like that you guys did a day. Maybe a little more, maybe a little less on certain days, but you're riding really from meal to meal.
Yes.
Right. You start at breakfast and you ride, you meander along, you stop for lunch, you meander along, you stop for dinner at the end of the day, and it's maybe late afternoon, and you've had a great day, you see everything. And that's the way to do it. When there were a couple of trips. So I just recently rode the GPZ that from New Orleans, right outside New Orleans, where we live, to Colorado, about 3,000 miles in 10 days. The only bad thing is I broke down on the second day, so I lost an entire day. So I was chasing the clock because I had somewhere to be. And it stopped. It started being miles over moments.
Okay.
You know, and I want more of those moments. Whereas parallel that to a couple of years ago, several years ago now, when my wife and I still lived in Connecticut, we both had mopeds, pedal start mopeds. And Connecticut's not a big state. It's probably only 115 miles from end to end. from New York to Rhode Island. We were about in the middle. So, but we did some research. There's 22 lighthouses that dot the Connecticut shoreline.
Okay.
And so we're on pedal start mopeds that top out at 35 miles an hour. So we rode the shoreline road all the way down to New York, stopping at the shore where we could see the lighthouse.
Okay.
So the goal was to take pictures of all 22 lighthouses on this thing. So it took us 3 days to do. We ended up doing down and back probably about 100, maybe 200, 225 miles, something like that.
Okay.
Total. Never went over 30 miles an hour. and it was, there's something about it. My wife's, she had a Motorbicane little Mobilite little 50V, had 2 little saddlebags in the back that matched the bike. We only took what fit in my backpack and fit in those saddlebags.
Right.
And 2 overnights, and it was perfect. You know, the weather was great. And there's something about those, just those little meandering journeys that are awesome.
Yeah, yeah. I should imagine on those bikes you'd get some fantastic miles per gallon.
Oh, it's 100. I think we stopped for gas once after we left.
Well, on the Monkeys, it wasn't quite as frugal.
Yeah.
We only had a 1 gallon tank,
Yeah.
and we could do maybe 50, 60 miles comfortably. So that was quite nice. You know, you just go for an hour, stop, have a coffee, go for another hour. It's nearly lunchtime. You know, and it was exactly that. And the nice thing about it, there were 30. I think there were 32 riders.
Wow.
And we all respected the fact that this could be dangerous, and none of us wanted to be dangerous, and so we all sort of slotted into almost a pair of bikes, and then another pair, just snaking down the road. Really awesome. Cool, almost like you see the Harleys going down sort of side by side. Sounds ridiculous, but it was the same thing. And one, the guy who organized this, he had a really great trick which we benefited from. He had 2 friends who were ex motorcycle police riders, and so they arranged one at the front and one at the back. The guy at the back would pick up any stragglers or look after them until they were sorted themselves out, and they were connected by radio. So it was almost like when I saw us in the shop windows as we went past, it was it was like a mother swan and lots of little baby ducks. But the good thing about them being ex-police motorcyclists, I imagine you probably have this in the US as well, but rather than stopping traffic, if you had some minister or high-powered person, rather than just blot out the whole traffic in the town, they would rush forward to the next roundabout, and just literally ride into the road, put their hands up, and tell the traffic to stop. And so we went from roundabout to roundabout like we were, in a parade, non-stop. Fantastic, absolutely fantastic.
3 days. What did you pack? You just packed a backpack? How did you pack clothes?
Well, we had the benefit of having a van that was traveling with us, and so we each had a reasonably sized backpack, but we put that into the van as we were traveling. So when we got to the next hotel, the van was there. We just grabbed our things and went into the room. So it was just it was very well planned by a good friend of mine, Kevin, and it was sensational. So much so that the following year we decided we just had to do another one. And I had to go organising that. This was different though. We went this time to Southern Ireland. And I decided that we all decided we'd do around Ireland, around the rim of the country, if you like.
Right. Yeah.
So starting at Dublin and Waterford and Cork and Tipperary, which is a long way away. That was special in a different way because we had to get there by ship. So we had the excitement of a cargo freighter, getting on that, and wow, it's brilliant.
How long was that?
That was also a week. It was
Okay,
slightly less mileage, about 850. But
yeah.
yeah, that was another week.
And so again, we've got some we're familiar with that area too. Our son went to graduate school. Our youngest son went to graduate school in Waterford,
Oh, right. Okay.
so in Ireland. So did you guys go the what is it called? Is it the Wild Irish Way? The road, Wild Irish Road on the backside that goes up? It's supposed to be 2 lane, but it's
Okay.
not 2 lane at all. I can't remember. I may be calling it the wrong name, but once you leave Waterford and you start going up I guess it's the western side. It's this windy little road that we ended up with. Uh, there were mostly bushes growing over it. I'm like, this is barely big enough for a bicycle. And I realized at that point in time that I realized the Irish scam at the rental car companies is they go, hey, we can upgrade you to a BMW sedan. And we're like, awesome. And I soon realized it's too wide
Right.
for
Yeah.
when you were in the cities. But once you got off, you're out on these country roads that have a stone wall on one side and hedges on the other, and pick your
Right.
poison, right? And so ended up having to. It's funny. Uh, Ended up having to go to the hardware store and buy rubbing compound and buffing both sides of the car, so I could
Right.
return it without having to pay for a paint job.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
it was just, but it was amazing. Just that had to be just such a brilliant.
Yeah, yeah, it was. It was a little bit more expensive because there aren't such a wide choice of hotels in Ireland.
Yeah,
But we had a similar arrangement. We had a guy. We only had one guy leading us from the front.
yeah, that had to be. So, is there another one? Was it just two, or how many of these monkey bike adventures have we been on?
I've only been on two.
Yeah,
The website sort of began to fade away to some extent
yeah,
after that.
yeah,
Personnel changes and one thing or another. We did go on one other sort of fairly interesting, but it was only a day, but it was in Brussels, in Belgium.
yeah, yeah,
So we threw the bike. My brother and I put our bikes in the back of my car. We drove to Brussels, and
yeah,
I suppose it's like any specialist hobby. You don't realize how many people have the same enthusiasm until
yeah.
you all join together in a group. And in Brussels,
Right.
I kid you not, there were 1,000 bikes
Oh
um,
wow.
on a route which I think they've done many years in succession. Roads were closed by the police,
Wow.
and yeah, if you stood in one spot and waited for
Yeah.
these 1,000 bikes to come past, it was I think it was about an hour's video just to
Oh
wait for
wow.
that. But that was just one day. It was all
Yeah,
done in a day, but that was a bit special.
Nigel, there's something about it that people think that you need to have a certain size bike to go on these grand adventures,
Yeah.
right? You need to. Yeah, I need to go spend $5,000 on a tour on a adventure bike
Yes.
and have it outfitted so I can go and do these adventures, right? You can do them on anything. You
Yes,
just
that's
have to
right.
go. You can do them on anything and just go do it. There's a guy from the UK. His name is Ed March. His website is C90 Adventures, and his first movie that he did, it's a documentary. It's him doing it. He left Australia with a 90 Honda 90, a little C90 step through, right, with the um, from the 70s. Had it shipped from Australia to Asia, and then rode it from Asia to London.
Wow. You would
Right?
think everything was worn out by the time you got to London.
Yeah, I'm
Wow.
trying to remember. He rebuilt it. He's an engineer by trade, so he may have had to rebuild it along the way. I can't remember that exact one. Uh, but then later on, he's got a YouTube channel, Ed March. I think it's C90 Adventures, and I'll link it in the description. But. He also then later in life, because of that, he started to go to the American. He's a merchant marine, so he works on boats as an engineer.
Okay.
So when he's off, he would do guided tours through Asia on a 90 for a week. So you fly there with nothing,
Okay. Yeah.
buy, because they're so available there, these Honda
Yes.
90s, buy it there and then sell it to somebody before you leave. So, you know, you either, and they maintain along the way. And then in doing that, then after that, him and his girlfriend chose to ship their bikes from the UK to Alaska because they wanted to ride from Alaska to the tip of South America on a 90. That's insane. But what they decided to do was to go as far north in Alaska as you could from the beginning. Like, I'm not far enough away from the tip of South America, so let me go further away. And then they decided in winter to ride across Canada from
Wow.
west to east, and then made a trip back across the US and then started heading down. And it's insanity.
Yeah.
But again, you don't need to be on a big adventure bike to go out and do this, or whatever bike it is. You can go have these crazy adventures on whatever you have in your garage.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, absolutely you can. Yeah, absolutely. And it was, yeah, you were all of the same mind. You know, I can remember as we were traveling through England, heading south, because of the sort of roads we were on, they would be the old roads. Those roads would take you straight through the middle of all the towns. And so as you went, this little flotilla of bikes went through the middle of the town.
Yeah.
We would almost stop the traffic. You saw the little schoolboys holding their mum's hand, saying, "Mum, Mum, look at this, look at it."
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it was great. We were well received. It was great fun.
You know, and there's something about traveling at that 30, 40 mile an hour range that the sides don't blur, right? You
Yeah.
have time to see something coming and focus on it, and then see it as it goes by, right?
Yes.
Because it's not a blur. You're not having to stay looking forward and doing 70 miles an hour. Really don't want to look around. You know, I want to look around a little, but I'm not going to follow it back. Whereas if
Yeah.
you're going slower rates, you can. And you know, one of the rules that my wife and I had, because we rode where we lived in Connecticut, 30 miles an hour were basically all the roads, so you never had to worry about mopeds. And but we had a rule, is that we stopped at every like estate sale or garage sale, tag sale that we saw, and every lemonade stand that we saw.
Okay.
It was just a rule. So if we saw kids selling lemonade out on the sidewalk, we'd stop and get it. Why? Because you're only going 30 miles an hour. It's easy to,
Yes.
right? You just pull over, and that's this conversation, like you said, about the schoolboys seeing the bikes roll by. Same thing when you roll up on a little bike, something like, people want to. It's not intimidating, so it's so approachable.
That's true. That's very true. Yes, because we went to various seaside towns, and as you say, when you all get parked in a group, the dads would be drawn to them, thinking, you know, lovely little shiny toys.
Yeah.
The mums would even be drawn to them. They may not be interested in bikes, but they look so cute, harmless.
That's it.
And all kids, as you say, were just loving them. So yeah, it was fantastic.
Yeah, you definitely make loads of friends.
Oh yes,
it's an interesting thing when you think about that we need to. I think we need to. It's just in these adventures that you shared so far. It doesn't have to be an overnight. It could be just a day, or it could be, like you said, put it in the back of your car, ride it to where you want to go, and then just ride it around.
Yeah.
It's something about that we have a favorite. Like my wife rides a 1978 Honda CB400, little Honda-matic. And if you've never ridden any one of those, they are the best. You twist and go. It's a semi-automatic transmission, so you do have to shift it, but there's no clutch. But from the start, it's a 2-speed transmission. I can click up into 2 and never touch it again. And it's just done. And you get to a red light or a stop sign, you pull the brake, you stop. When it's time to go, you just give it gas. And her favorite thing to do is to ride to breakfast.
Okay,
And
right.
to get up in the morning on a weekend, and just get up and go. There's no traffic early. It's weather's typically nice, and we can ride where we live on the North Shore of Lake Pontchartrain in Louisiana. We're only about 30 miles from the Mississippi Gulf Coast. So we can get to, and you're riding at that point, you're riding along the Gulf of Mexico. And it's so nice to be able to ride up. It's a 40 mile ride one way to go out there and just putt around. And I let her lead. So we ride at her speed. So she's comfortable. She doesn't feel like she has to keep up. And it's just a kick in the pants, just that little thing. It's just riding to breakfast, but it's so much fun, to be able to do those things. And I think people need to, I always encourage people, if they have a motorcycle, is don't just save it for bike nights or events. Make an excuse as often as possible to get on it and go. If it's even riding it to run errands.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, that's right. It's a good idea. Good idea. Yeah, the funny thing I found after that sort of extended monkey bike period, which probably lasted for maybe 7 or 8 years, I then thought maybe I should get a big bike, and I bought an import, a US import, an XJ 650 Yamaha.
Yep.
Nice bike, no problem with it, but it just didn't do it for me. It was like the bike had an expectation.
Yep.
Let's not do 60 or 50 or 40. Let's wind it up a bit. And it just didn't do it for me. So that went, and it's I think I've been indoctrinated into monkeys. I like watching other bikes. My son-in-law races GSXR 1000. That's a whole different ball game. Which is great fun to watch. But speed is not what I ride bikes for.
No, you said it so perfectly. The XJ 650 expected more, right? It had higher expectations from you than what you wanted to give it. The GPZ 1100 that I have that I ride, it wants to live around 7,500, 8,000 RPMs. That's where it wants to be.
Okay.
I'm comfortable 5,000 RPMs.
Yeah.
Right. I don't need to be any fan. And I'll get it up. It's okay in the lower gears too. I'll get it up a little bit because it just sounds so good. Right. It just sounds good. But I don't want to live at that. Well, I should say I want to live, so I don't want to ride at that higher RPMs, right? That's awesome. So so do you still have your monkey bike? Let me ask you that.
No, I eventually parted with it. And yes, but it's a great memories. When we were just in preparation for us talking today, I was thinking about when I first got interested in bikes, and I really feel very fortunate that when I was 13, 12, 13 was the era when some fabulous machinery started to come through. Up until then, we were talking about Bonnevilles and those sorts of bikes, which were okay, but they struck me as a 12-year-old as a bit yesterday.
Right.
And then we got the Triumph Trident, BSA Rocket 3, Norton Commando, Norton Interstate. That was just the most fabulous looking bike. And then, of course, the Honda just blew everybody away with this CV750. And I can just remember that whole 10-year period of just being one fantastic bike after another. I don't know, I can't put myself into the mind of a 13-year-old now, so I don't know whether they still get a buzz from the new bikes coming, available in the shops. But back then there was some fantastic machinery.
I really think the late 60s, early 70s, or even middle 60s to early 70s was the golden age for young people, like the age that we're talking about, to get a bike, because you still had, maybe you had enough regulation and not enough regulation that allowed you the freedom to go do it. Right? And I often, I love 90s, Honda 90s, all the versions of them. just because I didn't, my mother was very vehemently against motorcycles when I was a kid. And so we very anti-motorcycle, so we couldn't do it. But every time I ride like a Honda 90, whether it be a C200, any of the 90 iterations from the early 60s, I think of what it would have been like if I was 12 years old, 13 years old, and I had this and I was riding it to school.
Yeah, yeah, sure.
You know, and because kids did, they rode them to school, and it was their mode of transit, just like kids rode bicycles to school. And I often that gets stuck in my head, and I wonder if kids today have that. Do they even see it as an option?
Yeah, I don't know. I really don't know. Yeah.
Right? It's or but they have something different. And I've been thinking about this recently. They have something different because we have, with the advent of better batteries, they have e-bike solutions. And I don't know what the regulations are for e-bikes in the UK, but you know, as long as they don't go fast enough, um, or too fast, that they're still treated like a bicycle. So,
Yes.
but a bicycle that you don't need cardio, right? Meaning I don't have to worry about pedaling,
Yeah.
and I
Yeah.
can get on it, twist it, and do 20 miles an hour and go. And so the conversation I've been having in my head are e-bikes the entry level motorcycles for kids today?
Yeah, it could be. Yeah, that's possible. Yeah.
Because you know, and in thinking about this, I've been doing research on it, trying to figure out. I was like, when did the first battery operated bicycle come out? That's what my thought process. And crazy enough, the first one came out 1897.
Wow.
I mean, it probably had range across the living room. It didn't go
Yeah.
much further.
Yeah.
But the first motorcycle came out in 1885, 12 years prior.
Mm,
So it's been around for forever. It's just until today that we have the technology has caught up with it, that they're lighter, they last longer.
yes.
So the form factor fits.
Mm.
And I think electric bikes or in cars have a better perception today than they did in the 70s.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
You see what I mean?
Yeah, it'll be seen as a really
Yeah,
dodgy, rickety old thing. You know,
yeah,
no reliability, just
yeah.
thrown to. Yeah. Yeah. It's funny what
You
you
know,
say about your mum. I remember when my brother, who's, I say, a little bit older than me, got into bikes. I was sort of expecting a bit of a pushback. You
hmm
know, no, that's not for my boys. It's too dangerous. But
yeah.
my mum had no problem with it at all, and I
Wow.
eventually discovered that back in her day, her parents were both bikers. In fact, when she met my father, before she'd introduced him to her parents, he was talking about, I'm going to get some transport of my own. I'm
Yeah,
looking at getting a little car. And she said, no, 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 you can't do that. It has to be a bike.
yeah,
And that was, this. I have visions of my mum, now passed away, but a little old lady of 85. But yeah, she was always on the back of the bike with her dad, and that was
awesome.
normal for her back in the
Wow.
30s. Yeah,
Yeah,
fantastic.
yeah. That's such a, you know, just thinking about that is just it changes perceptions, right? Perceptions of what people think about bikers. If you weren't around it, if you didn't grow up and you don't have a point of reference to it, like my mother and father rode it back and forth to everywhere they went. That's what, you know,
Yeah,
if that, you meaning your mom, that that's it's interesting. It's all about that perspective, right? In
yeah,
whatever
yeah.
perspective you're coming at it from. But you have inspired me to do a crazy madcap adventure on a little bitty bike. Nigel, this was so much fun.
Yeah, I enjoyed this.
It's, you know, I am such, you know, I say this all the time. It's, the motorcycles are cool, but the stories are way better.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's right.
And just to be able to have these conversations, and I may say this every time, and I'm going to keep saying it because I think it's amazing. We're a world away from each other, and never met, and you can have these conversations because we're into the same things.
Sure. Yeah.
And when you focus on these commonalities, you build these relationships that are so interesting to me. It's so interesting that it happens, and that it can happen so quickly,
Yeah.
right? If you watch the news, all you hear is what we don't have in common.
Sure.
You hear about the division as opposed to hearing about the things as opposed to focusing on the things we have in common. And I love this, and I love
Yeah.
these conversations. And I look forward to many more. I look forward to, I want to go to, I, there's a couple of adventures that I want to do. One of them, my wife and I want to go to Italy and rent Vespas and ride them around, right?
Okay.
Tour Italy on a Vespa. So I think
Yeah.
that should be what you do, right? That is, what's more Italian than riding an old Vespa
Yeah.
around Italy?
Yeah.
It just seems like it would fit. And now that you mentioned it, I want to go back to Ireland, and I've thought about this before because I've talked to people in England and Ireland. I want to go there and do a weekend or week long trip on
A lovely
country
place.
roads.
Yeah.
Country roads, just not going fast, and stay off the motorway and just stay on these country lanes and just enjoy what's there. I think
Yeah.
there's something magical about that.
You'll love it. You
Yeah.
will. You will.
Dude, I'm excited. This is the best. Nigel, thank you so much for doing this. And
Pleasure.
it was amazing. So thank you.